Well, after 5 years of waiting and a month since the anime finished airing, Uzumaki has finally come to us in animated form. And nobody really knows how to define this thing at all because what the heck happened with this series? Back in 2019, this project was announced after so many other attempts to adapt Junji Ito's works into animated format without any success, it should be noted. At the 2019 Crunchyroll Expo, a new attempt to adapt one of the author's works was announced. And it wouldn't be just any work, but one of his signature works, the very Uzumaki. A work that even people like me, who weren't big fans of the author, knew about. Iconic manga panels and even just the name are widely recognized in the manga and anime community. And obviously, when an animated adaptation was announced, people were worried, but at the same time, they got excited when they saw the aesthetic the anime was going to have. Because with its announcement came a short teaser that simply showed the protagonist Kiri turning her head to see the silhouette of her father, Ichi, in the sky. Just seeing those 5 seconds of a girl turning her neck made people excited about the series' potential. Finally, we have a well-made adaptation of Junji Ito, the best anime of the year. That's what people were saying. But everything changed when that virus hit. Well, yes, we all know what happened in 2020 and how many things got delayed because of that virus. The anime was set to premiere in 2020, but was delayed until 2022 due to certain reasons. And then it got delayed again indefinitely, which left the fans pretty worried about the state of the series. You know, the usual. Well, I delay the series, then I delay it again, then again, and when no one remembers, boom, canceled. Until finally, in September of 24, the anime came out and people went completely crazy. Everyone praised the first episode of Uzumaki because it looked great. It was finally a worthy Junji Ito adaptation, with many calling it the best manga adaptation ever. I have to say, the episode felt a bit overproduced. Maybe it was simply the fact that it was too smooth compared to other anime, but there was something that made me feel strange watching the series. But 5 years had passed with only 4 episodes, so the anime should have outstanding quality given all that time. Or so we all thought, because a week went by, just one damn week, and everything went to hell. But what the hell happened? Because the anime, which started with such great visuals, ended up like this. For someone like me who only knew Uzumaki involved spirals, I had no idea what to expect. Watching the remaining 3 episodes was like watching a damn comedy. Back to the topic, what the hell happened with the Uzumaki anime? Well, first we need to talk a bit about the people who were behind the project. First, the animation studio. The studio itself doesn't matter that much, but rather the people who are going to be involved in the series unless it's ufotable. What happened with the animation studio was one thing. First, it was announced that Studio Drive would animate it, which was unusual but gave the project a mysterious vibe. Because by the time the anime was announced in 2019, the studio had practically nothing done. The studio became known for animating Toyo's second season at the end of 2022 and start of 2023, Eternity, and the spin-off focused on Megumi. In the end, it seems that Drive Studio realized the huge mess they had gotten themselves into, and seeing that they had bitten off more than they could chew, they decided that the best thing to do was simply to back out. And then, when they were left with just an animation studio, what the producers did was what happened. In the second and third episodes, the credited animation studio was Akatsuki. Even though it has a pretty powerful name, its productions are, what is all this crap? Also, it was pretty funny to see the credits for the second and third episodes because they were basically all Chinese names. Uzumaki was created with the hard work of the kids from Temu. At least this episode had some production value, since Fubuku, the studio for the first and last episodes, has only done this. What is this? Yeah, it's definitely weird. Above all, because while it's not unusual at all for studios to subcontract other studios to help with the production of a series, they switched studios entirely between episodes, highlighting how chaotic this production was. If we discuss a mess, we must address direction. This man you're seeing on screen is named Hiroshi Nagahama. He was the person in charge of directing, or at least that was the plan, the entire series. What's special about this man? He's definitely a perfectionist. In June 2021, a new teaser and a clip of the director discussing the pandemic were released. It hurt the anime's production so much that they had to rebuild the entire project from scratch. So those nearly 3 years of supposed production were wasted. Remember I said this gentleman was a real perfectionist? Perfectionism ultimately hurt the overall production. If we look at the episode credits, Nagahama is only listed as the general director in the first episode, and then he disappears from that role and is only credited as the storyboard creator from episode 2 to 4. Just to be clear, this guy wasn't just an episode director. He led the whole series direction, and they removed him after the first episode. Literally, they kicked out the guy who was supposed to direct the whole series and replaced him halfway through. On top of that, in the fourth episode, there's no general director credited, so, once again, what the hell happened here? And all of this surely led to that abominable drop in quality that happened in just one episode. But do you want to know one of the main reasons why this production was probably a nightmare? Well, let me tell you. Papu Belfi will teach you a famous animation technique called rotoscoping. But Belfi, what exactly is rotoscoping? In a very brief and simplified way, it's a technique that involves recording a sequence with real people and then animating over that sequence. A key advantage is achieving highly realistic movements with this technique. But one of the most obvious disadvantages is also that it's a technique that requires a lot of work to look good. Notice the subtle differences in the characters' movements between the first and second episodes. Just by watching the first episodes, we can notice that the attention to detail when animating the walks, the faces, the perspectives, and even the hair was almost obsessive. And just by watching the first few minutes of the second episode, we can see that everything I mentioned a few seconds ago completely fell apart. In the first episode, we had characters who walked like human beings, moving their whole bodies as they walked. In the second episode, we had PNGs, up and down to simulate walking, like a loquendo from Loquendo City in Sony Vegas. And if I start talking about all the perspective problems and the lack of consistency in how the characters' faces are drawn, we'd never stop there. What I feel happened is that Nagahama wanted to create an anime with extremely meticulous techniques, like rotoscoping and an excessively polished animation. But that made producing the first episode take too long. Too much time, which producers couldn't spare since they wanted money. Also, with the pandemic wiping out 3 years of work, I guess things were tough in many ways. Also, we have statements from one of the producers through posts that have already been deleted from his Blue Sky account, which is like a Twitter for weird people. The producer Jason DeMarco, who also served as a producer on a Suicide Squad isekai. The sequence of Fooly Cooly, or Fooly Cooly for the Bros, Ninja Kamui, among others, revealed several things. He explained he knew the production was in such bad shape that the series had only 3 options: to air nothing and simply cancel everything, to air only episode 1, which was already finished. That's why I say nothing. They never used the full budget on the first episode, nor did they choose to air all 4 at once. Despite all the mistakes, out of respect for everyone, and as my personal opinion, I would have also suggested airing the first episode, then continuing to fix and improve the unfinished ones, releasing them monthly. But I guess the producers weren't too happy about the idea of a project that had already been delayed for 5 years having to be released monthly on top of that. This guy was also a producer, so I'm not sure what to think. After all, coincidentally, other projects he was involved in, like Ninja Kamui or the Ricky Morty anime, also had some issues. Coincidence? I don't know. I don't believe in coincidences, but anyway, we've already given enough context. So how is the anime for someone who has never read the original manga? We'll see it next. But before that, remember that we're live almost every day on my secondary YouTube channel, Beals, and also on my channel on the purple platform, Beals. You can choose either one since I always stream on multiple platforms. If you want to have fun with your trusted YouTuber and anime inspector, you know where to look. Now then, let's see how the anime was for someone like me who hasn't touched the original manga even with a stick covered in crap. Well, the first episode introduces us to Kurozu Town, where our protagonist Kiri experiences different events that have to do with spirals. From her father-in-law literally breaking every bone to turn himself into a spiral, to people turning into snails, and even people turning themselves into black holes. And here's something that can be criticized about the anime regarding the script. I don't need to read the manga to see that many things are very rushed. In the second episode, 5 mini-arcs happen simultaneously. There's a guy who's in love with Kiri who ends up getting run over for love, which literally leads to a shonen-style fight against a classmate from his school. Then, his classmates turn into snails. A teenage couple tries to flee the town but dies. There's also a mysterious lighthouse where many people have died inside, Just by taking a look at the manga, you can perfectly understand why this happens. They chose to adapt 19 manga chapters into just 4 episodes. Each of those stories I mentioned earlier are chapters with a plot that begins, develops, and concludes right there. But they develop in a way that's adequate enough for you to have time to breathe and process what's happening. In the anime, all those stories occur almost simultaneously in the same episode within 30 minutes. And look, each of these stories is seen from Kiri's perspective. The main goal of each of these is not only to show the gradual deterioration of everyone in the town, but also to demonstrate the mental deterioration that Kiri herself can experience by going through all the terrible events. Maybe the anime, what it was trying to evoke was that feeling that, indeed, too many things happened in a short period of time. This could make you feel more of Kiri's suffering by experiencing everything rapidly without time to recover. The problem comes with the simple fact that all these stories happened so quickly and one on top of the other, which makes it so that instead of feeling panic or tension, you literally feel like all of this is a damn parody. And I really am sorry, but everything just seemed like a joke to me. Like the snails, the shonen-style hair fight, the girl with a crater on her face. I assume that in the manga they managed to make this feel creepy. But with the anime's pacing, animation, and plots that don't really grab me, I don't know. I know Junji Ito uses body horror, but after seeing scarier stories, Uzumaki didn't really affect me. Maybe I should take a closer look at the manga because, I don't know. Snails, shonen hair fighting against other shonen hair, people on the beach turning into some kind of two-headed snake. It's kind of hard for me to even take the plot seriously, but, well, I guess in the manga it's different. I don't know. Also, I'm not really a fan of body horror. Honestly, it doesn't make me feel anything beyond mild discomfort. So maybe Junji Ito's body horror just isn't for me. Everything culminates in episode 4 when the town's curse is revealed. Who would have thought? The Papus try leaving town to escape, but end up walking in circles and eventually return. It turns out that years have passed while they remain practically the same. And it also turns out that the whole town merged into an amorphous creature that it built. A spiral made of wooden cabins that leads to an underground area where you can see the origin of the spiral curse. But before the end, everyone dies except Kiri and Shuichi. However, they decide to die together, trapped under the curse. The most curious thing about this animation, besides the fact that the voice of the hurricane calling Kiri to suck her in, is actually Junji Ito's own voice. The anime ends with a completely original scene, where you can see possible reincarnations of Kiri and Shuichi. They repeat this scene from the first episode where they consider leaving the city, but that's it. This shows that indeed, the theme of spirals is always a kind of metaphor. It's an allegory for loops, for being trapped in cycles, but it gives a small hope that maybe at some point they'll manage to break it. But that loop? So now, as someone who knew absolutely nothing about the original work, what do I think about it? Well, I've already said it. Honestly, I didn't really understand the plot. It's like, yeah, spirals, haha, are scary. Watch people twist, break, and die, haha, so bizarre. Honestly, I didn't get it and couldn't follow the flow. Yeah, obviously it's creepy for someone to slowly turn into a snail, but literally, his classmate also turned into a snail. And they mated, which I find funny. I mean, the two transformed snails mated and laid eggs that they later tried to break. I mean, it's like everything that's scary also has a kind of weird, kind of funny component to it. Like, for example, the thing with the hair. The thing with the hair, with the woman's hair, it was scary, but then when there was the shonen-style fight with the jealous woman, I couldn't take it seriously anymore. They were literally having a stand battle. Literally, it was Star Platinum versus the world. So, how am I supposed to take it seriously? I'm sorry, honestly, no, I don't know if it's the anime's fault, and in the manga, well, it's told in a much better way. But no, honestly, no, I was unable to take those storylines seriously. On the other hand, I feel really sorry for poor Junji Ito. Poor guy, having to see that these things are his adaptations. Honestly, I just feel sorry for him. Has anyone even thought about him? I remember that before Uzumaki, I started watching a Junji Ito series. Well, from his mangas, an adaptation of his mangas that's also on Netflix, which is like an adaptation of his short stories, right? I remember there was one about an ice cream man that was kind of lame, another about a weird family, and another about some balloons, which was actually cooler. The one with the balloons is scarier than Uzumaki, but it doesn't matter. And I think it wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it. More or less. Relatively. So, to wrap things up, Uzumaki is definitely an anime, a series that many people were waiting for and many others thought was completely unadaptable. And it's fucking depressing that in 5 years, this is all they've been able to give us. I get that the pandemic caused issues, but I still can't understand what happened. Like, literally, to throw away 3 years of work just to start everything completely from scratch. We could ask ourselves many questions, but most likely none would have immediate answers. What was the need to complicate things so much with such a complex animation? Why did they choose to make 4 episodes? How bad did the first version have to be for them to have to restart it? Absolutely everything? At least I can say the story is technically understandable with these 4 episodes. For this, you might as well just watch a summary of the manga on YouTube if you're too lazy to read it. I'm sure some YouTuber has narrated, explained, and set the mood of the manga better than those adapting the anime. I'd bet my neck on it, honestly. Now we just have to wait and see if someday some studio will finally do a good adaptation for poor Junji Ito. Because honestly, the horror genre in anime is pretty weak. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone.